Welcome to the Breech Birth podcast. I'm Sasha Hopkins, private midwife, breech birth educator, and your host. This is a space to hear the real, raw, and powerful stories of women who have experienced breech birth in all its layers. Each episode features honest conversations with women who've experienced breech firsthand, offering insight and reflection. This podcast was born from the knowing that these stories need to be heard to inform, connect, and reclaim the story of breech birth. Whether you're navigating breech birth yourself, supporting others, or simply curious, welcome and thank you. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I just want to get a little bit of context questions before we start. So can you tell me what year your baby was born?
This year. He was born in March.
Beautiful. 2025?
Yes. Yeah.
And where are you located?
I'm located in Adelaide in South Australia.
Yeah. What kind of care did you receive during your pregnancy, labour, birth and postpartum?
I had a private midwife for most of my care, but I did have to transfer into hospital and have a little bit of public hospital care as well.
And did you have a vaginal or a caesarean?
Both. A caesarean in the end, ultimately.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And how many weeks were you?
39.
Beautiful. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Oh, a little bit is tricky. So I'm an endorsed midwife as well. I haven't used my endorsement, but I work at the public hospital. So this was my fourth pregnancy. I'd had a bit of a tumultuous time leading up to this pregnancy, but everything was going swimmingly until we found out pretty early on that he was breech, and then he stayed persistently breech the whole time. So that's kind of become my whole identity now, was that one with the lopsided belly. But I've been a midwife for 10 years, so I kind of felt like I was a bit savvy and I knew kind of where to go and who to talk to about trying to optimize my situation. I'm also a competitive bodybuilder, so the ab muscles were holding him in there tightly. Otherwise, I have 3 dogs and a stepdaughter. That's all. That's me.
Yeah. Awesome. You said this was your fourth pregnancy. Yeah. So was that your fourth baby?
No. So I've had 2 miscarriages and 1 needed to be a termination.
So do you want to share a little bit about your experience from the beginning of pregnancy?
I was very anxious. So we'll quickly recap the pregnancies. So the first one was a really uncomplicated miscarriage, which was a blessing, I guess, in the way. The second was a really, really complicated, drawn out missed miscarriage. So we had waited for 6 weeks to try and let them come earthside with some acupuncture and different things. And they decided not to. And then I ended up having some sepsis, misoprostol management, which didn't work, and then eventually a D&C. And so then I entered a bodybuilding competition to try and lose my period and not get pregnant, which I don't recommend. It's not a smart choice.
Was that your goal?
No, but it was a bit of a spacer. It's definitely, you devote your whole life to a bodybuilding competition. So it's definitely something to kind of put your mind elsewhere. But I did manage to accidentally get pregnant without a period during a bodybuilding competition. So that then we had to have that termination. I wasn't mentally, physically, emotionally prepared for that one. And then it was straight after my competition that I had 1 period back after losing it for being at such a low body fat percentage, and I got pregnant, which was the goal, but it was a lot sooner than anticipated. So I needed to get all my ducks in a row. But obviously, because of that long, drawn out miscarriage, I had a lot of anxiety in that first trimester. I don't wish a miscarriage on anybody, because you can just completely think that everything is fine, and it's absolutely not. So second guessing absolutely everything in that first trimester, and having ultrasounds really frequently, which I never thought that I would ever want. Definitely I'm a minimal intervention type of galley, but it seemed like something that my heart needed, was to check in on them more often than usual. I had a little bit of nausea. I didn't vomit. I would just cough and it would go away. Otherwise, I was tired. So we moved house in my second trimester, which I also don't recommend.
Mm-hmm.
And a third trimester in summer is definitely not ideal. But otherwise, I can't complain about my pregnancy, really.
Yeah. And you said you had a private midwife. Do you want to share? So you were a midwife already. Was that something that you had an intention for at the beginning?
Yeah. So with my previous pregnancy, I was going to just go through group practice in the local hospital, because we could do home birth through them. Even though I have a bit of a difficult relationship with the hospital because of some previous trauma, but I'm sure we'll cover that later. I wasn't financially in a position to be able to have a private midwife. So this time I was in a financial position to be able to have a private midwife, and I just wasn't willing to be risked out of having my home birth and that personal one-on-one care that I know you can get with a private midwife.
Yeah.
So, of course, as soon as I could, I found exactly the person who I always knew that I wanted to have. Because, we'd been connected. I was part of the South Australian Privately Practicing Midwives Association for a while, and I'd just known her forever, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
She probably thinks I'm a stalker. She might not have known me forever.
You found out you're pregnant, did you call straight away to try and book? I know they can book out pretty fast.
I think that I was maybe like 7 or 8 weeks. I think that I was just so anxious up until that point that it wasn't going to continue, that I didn't want to bother anyone. I waited a little bit longer than I probably should have, but she very graciously squeezed me in.
It's nice when you know each other.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it was pretty straightforward pregnancy. At what point did you realise baby was Breech, and how was that found?
Pretty early on, I think from about 33 weeks, I was kind of feeling him and knowing where he was laying. But then there's that midwife voice in your head that's just like, oh, it's way early. You've got so long. He can definitely move. And then kept feeling, and he just was never, ever changing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing your own palpation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to miss when there's a head in your ribs, really.
Yeah. Little brick in your ribs digging in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you've obviously picked that up. Did you tell your midwife? Did she just pick it up when she felt your belly?
Yeah, I think I was pretty sure. And then she auscultated with the Doppler, and that kind of like added the extra puzzle piece, and we're pretty sure that's where he was all the time.
And what kind of conversations and planning, what did it look like from there for you?
Obviously, in the initial stages, we just kind of were hopeful that he was just going to move himself, and I was happy for him to move himself whenever he was ready. So I guess 35-ish weeks, I started acupuncture and moxibustion, which I'll tell you right now, my partner is FIFO, so he's away for 2 weeks at a time, and trying to do moxibustion on yourself is not fun.
Very difficult, yeah. On your little toe, trying to bend your body.
I had so many burns on my little toe. And then obviously all of like the spinning babies movements and stretches. And I was very aware that I had quite a tight psoas, and all of my abdominal muscles were quite strong. So I was trying to stretch and relax those as much as possible. As much as I would have loved to continue training, because it is something that's really, really good for my mental health, I did pull right back on training in the gym because I just wanted to allow my body to soften and relax as much as possible to give him some space. I had some other body work done with another private midwife down here who also does some beautiful body work. Yeah, we threw everything at it. And then it got to about 36 weeks. I had gone into hospital because we were concerned that I was having some threatened prem labor symptoms. Must have been a little bit before. And so I was obviously trying to hide from the hospital for a while so that they wouldn't be on to me about my plans for a breech home birth still. But yeah, I kind of got the hard word when I went in just to check that I wasn't going to be dilating at 36 weeks. And so I had a bit of pressure from then on to be having an ECV. My private midwife came in with me as well. I was really happy. She was happy to advocate and support that. I was happy to have a home birth with my Breech baby. But to pacify the hospital, we had an ultrasound just to check the positioning of him and see if he was a good candidate for an ECV. But mostly for me, it was about seeing the size and the proportions and his position so that I had a better understanding of whether he was going to be a really good baby candidate for a breech home birth, so that I could put my mind at ease just that little bit more. Because obviously, as much as I have knowledge and experience and I'm very strong in my convictions, if you're pregnant, you're still going to get those seeds of doubt if someone is telling you that you're doing something that might harm your baby. You're only human. So yeah, the ultrasound said that he was a really good size and everything looked all pretty optimal. And it was actually, really tumultuous. It felt like a month, but it was probably a week and a half of deciding whether or not I would trial an ECV. On the one hand, I didn't want them to do anything that would jeopardize his happiness because my partner was working away at the time. And so I knew if anything happened and we needed a crash cesarean, then he wasn't going to get there in time, and he was happy. Why bother him? But then on the other hand, it was kind of a bit like, I always do the hard thing. So bodybuilding is an example. I always do the hard thing that people tell me that I can't do, and I push against, people's objections. But why couldn't I just try this one time just to do things the way that everyone says that you probably should, like path of least resistance? So it was that battle in my head. And I ended up going and trialing the ECV. made sure that we had a very experienced obstetrician do it. It was so lucky again that I had the right connections in the hospital and I could really stick up for my choices. And I mean, it didn't end up being a very pleasant experience, to be honest.
Did they give the tocolytics, the muscle relaxant for that?
Yeah. So I'd made a playlist as well. That was fun. We had 2 trials at it. So there was a registrar who was learning, who I also knew. She had worked with me for my miscarriages. And then the consultant who was kind of training the registrar. So we had a couple lots of terbutaline tocolytic. Yeah. It was a lot of brute force there.
Did you need any pain relief for it, like use the gas or anything, or you just grit your teeth and go through it?
Yeah, just grit my teeth. Yeah, I'm bad like that.
So it wasn't successful by the sounds of it. Baby was okay with the process?
Yeah, he stayed happy. He was just very sure that that's where he wanted to be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so what next? Where did you go from there?
So then obviously because my private midwife came to that appointment as well, and we had a consultant obstetrician who was very experienced in breech, we had a really good opportunity to have a really, really thorough chat about situations in breech vaginal births that are safer and less safe, things that we look out for, that we would be concerned about, and really laid out like a really good map of how would be the best way to proceed with a vaginal breech birth, particularly at home, and when would be the best time if we ever needed to be coming in. What are the signs that we're not happy with that we say, okay, now we're calling it, it's time to come in. So from that came really comprehensive preferences. So I had really strong preferences. We all put everything on the table and we wrote a really good document that was emailed to the most important people, and it was put in my EMR, my hospital notes, so that if I needed to transfer in, everyone knew where I stood on everything and we had an agreement. And then that kind of translated into I've forgotten the name of the document, section B or something. There's a document when you're going outside of your scope.
Declining recommended care. Like in the ACM guidelines, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. I guess it's just the acknowledgement of going outside of normal and making sure that I knew the risks, that they knew what I was happy for, those kinds of things. So we signed that. So my private midwife works in a team. One of her partners was there as well, and she's a little bit more experienced in breech birth as well. So it was kind of, we had her in on the loop because she was going to be definitely part of our little birth party as well.
Yeah. And were they both comfortable with supporting at home?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have made them do anything they weren't comfortable with, because I guess for my well-being, but also from my research, I know that a vaginal breech birth is only going to be as successful as, the people looking after you are confident. So it's like a little scale. But definitely my second was a little bit more gung-ho about it all. But I know that my primary, I chose her because I know that she's very analytical. She's very evidence-based. She likes things to be, everything's done to a T. So I had the best of both worlds, I think.
Awesome. And how many weeks were you once that was confirmed and, all right, this is happening, we're doing this at home?
In my head the whole way. So I think my ECV ended up being in the 36-week area, I think towards the end of 37, towards the end of 37 weeks, which I didn't think they were going to do. I thought I could just skip by 36 weeks and no one would bother me anymore. I was so wrong. Yeah, so it was definitely by 38 weeks that we'd decided that we had our plans locked in and I could just relax and wait for it to happen.
What sort of happened from there? Did you go into labour? Did your waters break?
Yeah, no, my amniotic fluid kind of started leaking at about 7 a.m. at 39 weeks exactly. So I kind of called my partner because he was working away, and I was like, now don't do anything because I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure I'm not going to go into labour for a couple of days, but I'm pretty sure that this has just happened. And so, of course, he started freaking out and finding a way home, which is good.
How far is he, like travel-wise?
An hour plane, but trying to catch a flight is tricky. So it ended up being that the earliest flight he could catch home would be at 5 p.m., which didn't change. Called my midwife again and said, look, I probably should be a little bit more certain of this, being that I know what this should smell and feel and sound like, but I don't know if I am sure. And then I laughed and then I just gushed everywhere. So I went, Roger, definitely start preparing things. But at this point the whole way I was in denial, and I kind of was like, I'm going to need antibiotics in a couple of days and you're going to have to start some contractions for me because I've seen how this goes. Cynical little gremlin in my brain. And then called my grandma to bring me over some maternity pads, and she's terrified of labour. So that was just brilliant. It was my favourite. So we had some cramps. I had some cramps, just kind of hanging out at home and in denial. I was in denial the entire time. And my second midwife came over just to check me out, just to see what was going on. And before I knew it, she was on the phone to my partner saying, you need to get here now because she's actually cracking on. And I got her to fill the birth pool so that I could slow down the little tightenings that I was having. Because again, I was still definitely not in labor, and getting into the pool was definitely going to stop these contractions that I was having, apparently.
Were you talking through them at all, or did you have to really stop and get through them?
I was breathing through them, but I have a history of endometriosis and ruptured cysts. So my pain perception is a little bit off. Yeah. I had the TENS machine. I had combs. I was pretty comfortable with my comfort measures, if that makes sense. There wasn't anything that was extraneous. Yeah. Continued to be in denial for a few hours, and ended up having a house full of people. So I ended up having 3 midwives. And
was that the plan, or did that just happen?
Well, my midwives team had just expanded. They'd welcomed a couple of extra midwives in, and one of them I knew I had worked with previously at a different hospital. And so they asked if I was happy to have her there. And I was, happy. More the merrier. Come on in. And also, I was so happy to have more people be able to experience breech vaginal birth. So I was happy to have whoever wanted to be there to take away that unknown for people, because my parents thought that I was mad. It took a little while to say to them, like, I need you to do some research. Here are some podcasts, because you can't come to my house. You can't come near me. If you've got a seed of doubt, I don't want it. But they did end up being there. They did their homework, bless them. And my partner's sister was there. She was going to be taking some photos, and then she was also just his proxy. So he was sending her little Snapchat videos, and he was updating the Spotify playlist. So she was passing on messages and playing the music for me. And mum and dad popped in and out because they had a few things to do during the day. So it was like a bit of a merry-go-round party type situation, which was so fine with me because, again, I wasn't in labor.
It's like, I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
Thanks, everyone, for coming. Could you just fan me and feed me some snakes, please?
And how long do you think that was going on for?
Yeah, I was in the water for a while. Yeah, and then I got out. I didn't know it at the time, logically, but I was feeling some pressure. So I was standing in the kitchen denying that I was bearing down. And eventually moved to the lounge room at some point. I just really smoothly transitioned into pushing, I guess, and did so for a couple of hours. And the beautiful result of those couple of hours of pushing was a scrotum, and that's about it.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is why I say I had a vaginal birth.
You birthed a scrotum.
Yeah. I had a vaginal birth and I had a cesarean. We did everything.
So no rumping,
No.
just the scrotum had come through, and that's as far as you got.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how long was that point? So you said you'd been pushing or feeling that urge to bear down for a few hours. How long was the scrotum out before your midwives and you sort of decided, okay, something's not right here?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I don't think that there would have been I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. I don't think there would have been full scrotum on view for particularly long, because I think that causes a bit of alarm when you can see a full scrotum for an hour or so. Like, that's probably not. I know that I really, really wanted my partner to be home before we left for the hospital. So we did try a lot of things. We tried some different positions and
so he's
my
still
bladder
not there yet.
and no.
Gosh, that would have been stressful.
Yeah, particularly for him and my brother, who drove him home from the airport and narrowly avoided some feeding fines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he got there, and then it wasn't much longer that we let SAS know that they could come and take us in to the hospital. Yeah.
Okay. And you said you tried some things while waiting for him to turn up.
Oh, so just different positions and variations of knees and feet and birth stools and just everything. I would have stood on my head if I had to. And different kind of hip tension pressures. And yeah, I remember in the beginning thinking that if I was trying everything I could to not be in labor so that my partner could get there. And I remember thinking, if I stay in my midwife brain, then my reptile brain can't take over and I can't go into labor. So I was even pushing and thinking, look here, I'm still thinking like a midwife. I'm definitely not in labor. I would like an in-out catheter, please. We did what we could. Yeah. One of the midwives had done an internal just to check, where our anatomy was sitting. And we were pretty sure that he was in a really good position to be birthing vaginally still. What we think now, retrospectively, is that when I was pushing, he was turning sacroposterior.
Did you see Women's Health Physio in pregnancy?
Yeah.
And I just think with that background of the bodybuilding, was there that complete relaxation of the pelvic floor? And was that what was holding them up?
That was definitely forefront of my mind. I was going to the pelvic floor physio from 18 weeks, making sure that everything was going to get out of the way like it needed to, because I definitely had seen that anecdotally, like a lot of really fit, strong women were having a bit of trouble getting past that pelvic floor. So I was determined that that was not going to be me. Yeah, I did the work there. So yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
It was a little bit more of a obstruction than that, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And so you went in an ambulance, transferred?
3 ambulances. I didn't go in all 3.
I was going to say, well, we split into 3? Yeah. 3 arrived, yeah, okay.
3 arrived, yeah. So once they finally figured out that I needed to be on a barouche and just a Gelco wasn't going to do the job, we got in and we were on the way, and I had a green whistle and went back to talking shop again with the paramedic, who I happened to know someone that she worked with.
So talk us through that when you arrived and what that looked like. What did you already have a bit of an intention of what the plan was, or you just kind of go there and see what happens next?
Yeah, so I guess when my midwife was saying, Steph, I think it's time. What do you think? And I was saying, well, what are we going to do? What's going to be the plan? And kind of it was a bit of like, I don't know, but probably anesthetic is going to be involved in sussing out. And in my head, I was going, okay, spinal and cesarean is what's going to happen. I think that I had just come to peace with it. It's fine, because we'd also done so much work, my partner and I, in writing down preferences for every single scenario that could occur. Like if and this was before I knew that there was going to be a breech component at play. It was, if I'm going to need to be induced, then I need to have this, this, and this. And, if I'm going to have any kind of anesthetic, it's going to be this first and only this if absolutely necessary. So we had definitely written out a detailed plan for what was going to happen if any scenario was going to occur. So I felt pretty comfortable in that. And then that was also kind of duplicated in the notes that we'd already discussed with the obstetrician earlier. I felt pretty comfortable going in. There were a few staff members who I didn't really want to be faced with, which was also written in my plans anyway, that those people weren't going to be coming near me. It was just, I know I'm probably going to see faces that I don't want to see at some point. So that was kind of my only thing. Otherwise, I rocked up to ED. My midwife was saying, Steph, do you want to be covered with a sheet? Because you're going through ED, everyone's going to be looking at you. And she reminded me later that I said, this is the only time in my life I'm going to have nuts. I feel like I should show them off.
That's great.
Something to that effect. And so, no, I was fine.
You're clearly having a ball with the pethidine, the whistle.
Yeah. And then obviously you make any kind of grunting noises in front of ED nurses and you go straight to labour ward. They don't want to be doing any of that. And then it was another obstetrician who I've worked with a lot, who I was really happy to see her face when I came in, and she already was all over my preferences and kind of was saying, I know that you don't want to have a CTG without a scalp fit, for example, but I hopefully we don't have it on for long. It was kind of nice that I didn't have to explain anything. I didn't have to fight for anything.
I already knew.
It was already laid out on the table.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And then I remember thinking that this obstetrician, whilst I respected and trusted her, she was not who I would be the happiest to be doing a breech vaginal, especially if it wasn't going to be working with experienced midwives. So I was not more than happy. Obviously, there's an element of like disappointment, but for her course of action to be a cesarean, because that was going to be the safest for everyone, because that's what she would be the most comfortable with, which sounds very anti anything that I would have ever said, but it's exactly how I felt. So I knew at that point we'd tried everything that we could to do things the way that I had intended, and we couldn't literally have done another thing. So that was where we were going.
Yeah. So you called it.
Yeah, I did. I think she started saying, now, Steph, your options are, and I just went spinal and cesarean. Thank you. I am done now. I want to see my baby. I want him to be healthy. Let's get him out.
So when you got the spinal in, could you sit for that? I'm just thinking about your scrotum.
I was laid down.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I guess as well, the proviso was it should probably have been a Cat 1 cesarean. So it should have been very, very quick. It should have been a general anaesthetic. But
was there any concerns with baby though?
It was tachycardic. Yeah, his heart rate was increasing. It was
high.
Yeah. Which I would expect, to be fair. I was pushing pretty hard.
He's being squished.
Yeah, poor little thing. Because I'd worked so hard to get Nate there on time, it was, we'll give you one shot at this spinal, and we know that you can get into the position. We know how important it is for you to stay still. So we'll give it one go. If we can't get it in quickly, then we're going to go for a general. So I knew my mission. I was ready for that. Yeah, it was all pretty quick, which was good.
And how was that experience at Cesarean? Do you want to talk a little bit through that? Just I know there's going to be women listening who are thinking about having Cesarean for the breech babies, just to give them a bit of an explanation.
It was really surreal because obviously I've been on the other side of so many Cesareans. And so I kind of knew logically what was going on all the time and how I was expected to feel. And I've been in for surgeries before and I get very nervous and shaky and you can't actually stop me shaking. So I was expecting all that, but I was actually very calm. I hadn't specifically asked for any particular music or for staff to not be chattering or anything like that. So I was okay that it was whatever music was playing. I remember at one point thinking, if I could just think of a song that I want to play, I could ask for it, but I couldn't. So I just went with it. But I also had a great midwife who met us in the hospital, you know, who was working in the hospital, who I have a good relationship with, who was taking photos for me, which was amazing. And I guess the thing is that it's very different for me going into it than it would be for someone who's never seen one or not really had surgeries before, because I have seen worst case scenarios and I've seen cesareans that I have kind of put my hand up and said, I don't think this is okay. I think that we should be being a little bit more woman-centered here. And I've seen some beautiful ones. And I knew that mine sat somewhere in the middle and I was okay with that, because the goal wasn't for me to have, this doesn't sound nice, but the goal wasn't for me to have a beautiful woman-centered cesarean. The goal was for me to get my baby out because I had done everything that I wanted to do to be woman-centered as much as possible. And this was just a necessity. We just needed to just do it. Yeah, I don't know how that comes across, but that was just my thought process. It was just, this just needs to happen now. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
The anaesthetist and the anesthetic nurse are kind of behind your head. They're kind of taking care of you from that side. And so they're generally your go-to people. And they were lovely. They were, you know, chatty and keeping me calm. Not that I really need, I think they were keeping my partner calm more than anything.
He's sitting next to you.
Yeah. And we had the neonatal team come in and they kind of introduced themselves to us and had the cot so that we could see. And then I had my obstetrician and her registrar over the drape, chatting me through what was going on and complaining that my abs were too tight for her to be able to separate. So there's obviously the formalities of, like, you know, all the staff checking that we've got the right person, the right procedure, and we're happy that everything feels safe. So that kind of plays over and you've got to repeat yourself a few times. Yes, I've got all my own teeth and yes, that's my UR number. So it was pretty straightforward.
Did your private midwife have credentialing so that she could come in, or did you have someone who you knew at the hospital?
She came in as a support person. That's a really funny question. Can I go off on a little tangent?
Yeah.
So my job at the hospital that I was birthing at is in corporate, and it's my job to be formalizing the framework around credentialing for private midwives in the hospital. I didn't get to finish it before I went on maternity leave. So no, she's not credentialed, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Wow. So you actually got to support people in your cesarean, is what you're saying?
No, so she was there in labour ward preparing me and then ready for me to come back to, but she wasn't in theatre. And we had discussed antenatally that if I wanted her to come into theatre, we could probably work it out. We could probably have some discussions with people and arrange for it, because there are circumstances where we can arrange those things. They do it for birth photographers as well. But I kind of had decided that, this also sounds weird, that it was a space that I didn't feel particularly uncomfortable in. It felt like it was a space where there wasn't as much intuition and midwifery thought that needed to go into things, and it was very much just an obstetrician coming in and doing a thing, and then afterwards that beautiful warm support would be really beneficial. So it was kind of like I didn't actually want that many people around me. I just wanted to, again, just do the thing.
Get it done. Yeah.
Okay.
So when he was born, did they lift him up, show you? Did he cry?
Yeah. I did ask to put the drape down, but we put the drape down a little bit. You can see up in the metal grate on the roof, so I watched it all anyway. He was pretty stressed when he came out, so he went straight over to the resuscitator and had some puffs of air and that kind of minimal resuscitative measures, like a good rub and some oxygen to help him puff up his lungs and things. He came over after a while and had some skin to skin with me. My partner was there. We had photos and then kind of got taken off to neonates, and my partner went too. So he ended up in NICU for a night with some breathing support. Nothing, no intubation or anything, just a little bit of extra positive pressure.
Yep. So CPAP.
Yeah.
Yep. And was that because he was breathing fast or anything?
I think that he had a bit of work of breathing. He was working a bit hard.
And so that means your partner went with baby and then you were left in the theatre without a support person. So how did you feel in that point?
I think it was a really short period of time. They took him quite close to when I left theatre anyway. Actually, my obstetrician, who I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but she's not known for being particularly warm and fuzzy. She's great. She's brilliant. Not the one that you'd expect to give you a big cuddle. But she actually let the registrar finish putting my skin layer back together. I came behind and was kind of like rubbing my shoulders and rubbing my head and chatting me through things and doing like a little informal debrief whilst that was finishing up after Nate and my baby had gone to NICU.
That's really lovely. Lovely to hear.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I love hearing those kinds of stories that you aren't not programmed, but you don't come to expect those kinds of things. And it's really nice that it's becoming a little bit more expected.
Yeah, it's just empathy.
Yeah. And also time. I know everyone is so time poor, so it's nice just those few minutes actually make such a huge difference.
So you were feeling okay in there, you went to recovery. Was that all pretty smooth sailing, no issues?
So in my hospital, we go back to labour ward for recovery. So I went back there with my midwife, and I was there furiously shaking my legs, trying to get sensation to come back so we could go over to NICU to see my baby. Yeah, it all went really well. And I obviously metaphorically stomped my feet loud enough that we went off to NICU pretty quickly, had some skin to skin. The neonatal nurse practitioner had come over to see me before we'd gone over because I think he'd hit Nate with a bunch of questions that he knew the answer was no, but he didn't know what the right answer was. So it was kind of like, no, we're going to give this injection. We're going to give a dummy. We're going to give formula. We're going to do antibiotics. And he was going, no, I know the answer is no. And you're going to have to now refer to Steph for the rest of these things. Because, yeah, I think that he was a bit flabbergasted by everything, but he knew that I had strong opinions on these things. So we were able to do a bit of negotiation because we was quite stressed. So his blood gas that they did at birth, he was a bit stressed. He was compensating for quite a while. And so as much as this is not advice, this was what I was doing, but I was just going to skip the Hep B vaccine at birth and I was going to do oral vitamin K. Seeing how bruised he was and that his little scrotum had, most of the skin had kind of grazed off and he was looking a bit battered, poor little guy. I was happy to have the injection and that was just a personal, I'm okay with this.
For the vitamin K.
Yeah, if anything would happen with him, if he'd had a bleed, I wouldn't be okay with it. So let's just do it. And ended up agreeing to antibiotics because he was already pretty compromised, but only for 1 day, not 2 days. So just little things that it was kind of like, I know that I would love to just say no to everything and trust that he's going to be great, but it's going to work out better if we can compromise and we can understand the reasons behind each one of us has our own decision. So I think we're quite happy with what we came to. Yeah, so then by the time we got over there, we took all of his CPAP off so that he could have skin to skin, and we didn't actually need to put it back on again because he calmed down a lot on skin to skin. Shocker, who would have thought?
Wow, there must be some research on that.
Surely. And then started rooting around for a feed, but he had an orogastric tube in, so I kind of was like, well, he's not going to feed very well with this. He's kind of picking his tube out. What's happening here? Oh no. So yeah, he just then like shot through after that. He had a couple of nights in neonates just to wean himself off the little IV drip that he had, but otherwise he was only breastfed and I was there. If I could be there, I was there. If my legs weren't working, I didn't care. I was going to be there.
And so how many days total were you both in the hospital?
So he had the 1 night in NICU and then 1 night in neonates, and then he came into the postnatal ward with me. So we had 4 nights.
So what's neonates defined as?
I'm fighting every fibre of my being to not say fat farm.
Like just make sure they're feeding sort of thing? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm used to the wording of NICU as the more high intensity care than special care. There might be a bit of transition and the fattening and then off to the ward. So just slightly different wording in different state.
And I think even between hospitals, because I've worked at actually most hospitals in South Australia because I've done a bit of agency and it's kind of even different between the hospitals in SA.
Yeah, okay. All right. So 4 nights in the hospital. How did your breastfeeding go? Did you need any LC support or your midwife support?
Yeah, he was actually really good. I thought of all the things for him to be just good at, that was my favorite. I was super happy that it was just the thing that he was really good at. He just took to it really well. We had a problem because although I'd specifically asked for him not to get weighed in theatre, which to me meant don't weigh him on the resus cot, they just actually took the resus cot to NICU and weighed him on the resus cot. So it wasn't a very accurate weight as far as I'm concerned. So that paired with the fact that he had gotten quite swollen. And before we were discharged, he had kind of gone back to normal size of his genitals. So I feel like there would have been a lot of weight lost there. So he had lost quite a bit of weight. And, you know, they were starting to get concerned that he would need to go home on top-ups and things like that. And I did my thing and just said, no, I'm just going to actually breastfeed him more because I have stacks of milk. And I ended up expressing and saying, look at all this milk I have. He's not going to go hungry. Everything's going to be fine. So we did another little battle, last little battle on the way out of the hospital, just to make sure that we could go home without a feeding plan and just let me trust that I'm going to feed my baby. I know what's right for him.
And he obviously fed amazingly and put on weight. And so you had your private midwife. Did she come and see you at home?
She did, yeah. He was slow to gain weight, but by all accounts, that's actually pretty okay. We were okay with that. Given that it was pretty traumatic, we were happy for him to have a bit of extra time to get back to his birth weight. I'd had him on a 3-hourly breastfeeding limit just mainly for my peace of mind. He didn't ever really go longer than that anyway. He wanted to feed more frequently, but it was just a me thing. There's nothing wrong with feeding him more.
Yeah. And what time frame did you have in your mind? Because I know you've got your midwife in mind for him to get back to his birth weight.
I didn't care, is my short answer, because his birth weight to me wasn't accurate anyway. So I wasn't measuring against anything solid. To me, it was just, you know, does he look happy? Does he look full? Is he weeing and pooing? Is he growing, you know, according to his clothes and according to how he feels when I hold him against me? You know, obviously, if my midwife was concerned, then I was going to do things, but we were doing all the right things. He was gaining weight. It just wasn't as quickly as you would expect. And it still kind of isn't, to be fair. He's a petite little dude.
He's a slow grower.
Yeah.
Did you end up engaging any support from like osteo or chiro for him? Being a breech, often they can need support.
Yeah. Osteo sat nicely with me. So within, I think, within the first couple of weeks, he'd been to osteo and we still see her. He's quite tense and his neck was quite tense because he was kind of squished very stiff inside. And so that kind of led to a fair bit of vomiting and just a very tense body. Like we would have to kind of change his nappy on an angle because he would kind of hook himself around a bit. Yeah, we're kind of still seeing our osteo. I mean, we love her, so we kind of just enjoy it anyway. But, you know, vomiting, gas, reflux, those kinds of things.
Do you feel like it affected his latch at all when he was feeding? Sometimes they can favour a particular side, or you don't feel the difference?
It's tricky because I know there's a few things at play. So I have a really aggressive letdown.
Okay.
So kind of in the beginning, his latch isn't a latch. It's like let me
catch it.
Keep up with this. Yeah. And we share a very high arch palate. So I had the same thing. My mum couldn't breastfeed. She kind of, it was tumultuous. So I'm doing better than that, which is, you know, lovely. So there's a few things at play with his latch. And that obviously that tight neck. I was doing a football hold on the right side. That felt more instinctive to me, but we did switch to going across the body, both sides. I think the only difference I noticed from that was that sometimes when he would feed on the right side, he would have a little red crease on his top lip, and that kind of went away when we switched that over. So yeah, but I was just trying everything. The vomiting, it breaks you. You don't realize how much a baby vomit can break you, but when you know how much time you've just spent trying to feed your baby who's losing weight, and then everything just comes back out again, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, so you're wasting it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Keep it in there.
I'm just going to plug that now.
Is there anything else in your postpartum journey that you feel you want to share? How your body was post-cesarean?
My body was actually pretty good. It's been tricky because obviously I've had certain expectations of my body. I won a pro card a month before I became pregnant. So as much as I had expectations about my body, I had expectations that other people had expectations of my body and that I was going to bounce back. Logically, I knew that was a silly thing. Like there's no bouncing back. It's not a thing. So it's just fighting that little inner demon in my head that like I would just love to wear jeans, but it's not a big deal if I don't wear jeans. No one's expecting me to wear jeans right now. But otherwise, I had my pelvic floor physio assessment and everything looked really good there. So I've returned to the gym, albeit very slowly. My hips and things have all been quite tight because I've been seeing our osteo as well. I'm a little bit janky just from pushing for a long time and compensating for a bit of a weight discrepancy on different sides of my body with that head. But otherwise, my wound's been healing nicely, and just, oh my goodness, the rock hard boobs was something I didn't expect, but that's another thing.
Yeah. It's a whole nother journey.
Yeah, I remember thinking I was so prepared that I had my pad in my undies ready to go after my showers. And then I would like put them on and I'd be walking out to the bedroom being like, why are my feet wet? And I'd completely forgotten that my boobs are just going to leak all over my feet.
So it sounds like you had a good supply going on.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So knowing what you know now and having the experience that you had, if you had another breech baby on board now, would you do anything differently?
I would start bodywork earlier and I would start trying to reposition him earlier. So massage, some fascia, releasing osteo as well. And also I think I didn't actually really do yoga. I didn't actually have time. It's pretty much a part-time job trying to flip a breech baby who just doesn't want to do it. It's not part of their life plan. But yeah, and I think being a bit more selective about the things that I would put energy into. So I guess maybe put more energy into yoga and stretching than I had in acupuncture. Not that I don't think it did anything, but I think that that's the 1%. And I think that the body work is a greater proportion of how we're going to change things. But also, the only reason that I would be doing these things is because I know that I have that scar on my uterus, and that puts a bit of extra pressure on me to try and be as natural as possible and avoid having to go in. I think if this is an impossible scenario, but if that scar wasn't there, I'm not scared of having a breech vaginal birth. I never have been. It's just a variation, and it is just unfortunate that this is where we went. But obviously, I've tried everything now. So if anyone wants to ask a question about any aspect of having a baby, I kind of have some answers for everyone.
Were there any resources that you used or any that you would recommend for anyone that's carrying a breech baby at the moment?
Yeah, so the Great Birth Rebellion, Midwife's Cauldron, obviously, amazing sources of information. And then the resource folders that Melanie the midwife has, there was lots of really good studies in there. And then obviously because I work in the hospital, I have access to the hospital library. So there was more resources there that I had access to. And that was just to calm my analytical brain that just wanted to know the numbers first, and then I could process the rest of it emotionally. That might be just an ADHD thing that I have ADHD. So I kind of process things in multiple different ways at the same time. But I also think that it's important to have a really good understanding of the local procedures and protocols, because if you do need to come into contact with the hospital, or you're choosing to come into contact with the hospital, or what, the state guidelines are, or the College of Midwives, all those kinds of things, what they say about it, you want to know where they're coming from and understand what you want differs from what everyone else wants you to want, basically. Because even knowing that I use those protocols all the time, I still didn't know it as intricately as you would expect that I do, because you refer to it all the time. So yeah, I think that's really important, which seems like a little bit counterintuitive, but I think that's helpful.
I guess just for women to take away, asking if you are having a hospital birth or there's a potential of transferring, you can have an appointment and you can ask for their policy on a breech vaginal birth or cesarean. What does that look like, so that you've got a really clear understanding of what will be offered when you arrive.
Yeah. Or I don't know what it's like in other states, but in South Australia, we have the South Australian Perinatal Practice Guidelines, which are free for anyone to access.
Yes, I have read theirs, but I know in Queensland, we don't have a specific guideline for breech. So we're referring to WA, South Australia, but then actually the individual hospitals have their own policies and they're not for public access. Yeah. So you do actually, it depends on the state that you're in, that you may actually have to ask for a copy, which is unfortunate because we should be able to access that.
It is, yeah. And as much as I wanted to avoid going into the hospital, I also had my own reasons for that, and I had my own traumas associated with it. But I think that it is beneficial, if you can, to go into your local hospital, even if every fibre of your being is having a home birth and you know that. Having the consultation and saying, if I was going to need help, who is the person, who's my contact person, who is the obstetrician who feels the most comfortable, and how am I going to be able to approach this in the best way for me, because at the end of the day, you don't need to care about what the hospital wants. You need to care about what you want and how you can get that. So sometimes you have to do things that are a bit uncomfortable so that you can overcome them before you're in that stressful situation potentially.
Yeah, perfect. Do you have any words of wisdom or advice other than what you've just shared? Anything in addition to share with women expecting a breech bub listening to your story?
They're so special. I feel like when you've got a breech baby on board, you know that they're going to be that one that's going to defy the odds. They've got their own opinion. So just, I guess, don't try and tame them from the beginning.
They're going to turn up how they want to turn up.
Exactly. And like, trust your instincts, because I knew that he wasn't going to turn despite everything that we were doing. I did it because other people wanted me to, but I knew that's what he wanted.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been beautiful to listen to.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Breech Birth podcast. These stories matter. They stretch what we think we know and bring voice to experiences that need to be heard. I'm so grateful to the women who have shared their experiences with us, raw, real, and full of wisdom. If this episode resonated with you, please follow, share, or leave a review. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Breech Birth Podcast. And if you have a breech story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, may we continue to reclaim the narrative, one story at a time.